What's up, everybody? It's your boy Tate Dezay, host of Mr. Big Head Reads, the podcast where Black books meet bold conversations. This May, we're taking a deep breath together for Mental Health Awareness Month with our special series, Brother Breathe. We're talking about healing, joy, and the real stories behind Black men and mental wellness. So please subscribe, like, and share these upcoming videos with a brother or a sister who needs a reminder every now and again to just breathe. So let's open our minds and our spirit to receive. And don't forget, Black literacy is Black liberation. All right, welcome to Mr. Big Head Reads, where books meet bold conversations. This May, we're flipping the script a bit with a special series dedicated to Black men and boys' mental health and well being. Because healing is revolutionary and Black literacy is Black liberation. So each episode, we're bringing the real talk, resources, and reflections we all need to thrive mind, body, and soul. So let's get into it. I'm super excited to invite our first guest to kind of kick off this month as we embrace Mental Health Awareness Month. So Jordan Costin Sumpter is a licensed psychotherapist, school social worker, and the founder of Safe Space Nova, a nonprofit supporting LGBTQ youth with degrees from Howard University, American University, and the Catholic University of America. He brings a diverse professional background spanning IT, nonprofit leadership, and clinical social work. Jordan specializes in working with LGBTQ youth and individuals and underperforming students, blending cognitive behavioral therapy, psychodynamic, and solution focused approaches. He also has advanced certifications in trauma, anxiety treatment, sex and couples therapy, and other areas, including crisis intervention and youth mental health. As a frequent speaker and advocate, Jordan is passionate about advancing mental health access, equity, and empowerment across all diverse communities. So it is such a pleasure to bring you on, Jordan. How are you feeling this morning?
I'm feeling great. Thank you for having me. I'm happy and excited to talk about the subject matter that we have for the schedule today.
Absolutely. And I must say that's an impressive resume. You are DC down, okay? Howard American and the Catholic University of America. So it's safe to say that you love the DMV.
It is. I fondly call it, I was on a DC tour school. So I came here
Absolutely.
for Howard, fell in love with the area, stayed after graduation, and then found another program at America for my first grad. And then I changed my careers, more of which I'm sure we'll talk about later in this episode, but changed my career path, went back to school. And luckily there was a university that had the programming that I needed right in the nation's capital.
That is awesome. So tell me a little bit about where you're from. Are you from the DMV area, or what led you to the DC area?
I am not. I'm originally
Okay.
from Atlanta, Georgia. Spent all
Okay.
18 years there. And little known fact about my family is I come from educators. So my grandparents were educators and before them as well. And education is something that was really keen for us. And given that as a person of color, we think about over the years, there haven't been as many of us in those academic spaces. I'm sorry, learning
Mhm.
spaces, so to speak. So HBCUs were something that my family used to get that leg up, right? To get that college degree. So a lot of my family have gone to Spelman, have gone to Clark, have gone to Morris Brown, have gone to Morehouse. I was one who said I'm going to do something different and I want to still go to a HBCU. And for those who don't know, a historical Black college or university, but I'm thinking I want to leave the area. So I decided I wanted to come up here to Howard University. I gave it a look around. I loved it. I love the city. I'm very much an urban person, for those who don't know.
Okay.
Love the city living. So Howard University is where it was, and that's how I got here.
That's amazing. So it's we basically kind of sort of flipped. I was in DC, now I'm in Atlanta, and you live in DC currently. So that's awesome. I'm actually I went to school in Atlanta, but moved away for a few years, and I just came back a few months ago. So I'm in Decatur area. Decatur was greater.
Okay.
So that's awesome. And it's awesome really to hear that you come from a family of educators. And so I'm sure reading was a part of kind of your routine as a kid. So are there any favorite childhood books that stick out to you?
At risk of sounding overly simplistic, uh,
Okay.
Green, Green Eggs and Ham is actually one of the favorite childhood books that I
Okay.
love. In the story, the premise is you have Sam I Am asking this other character, "You've got to try this green eggs and ham. You got to try this green eggs and ham." And he's told repeatedly in response from the other character, "No, no, 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 no. I'm not doing that. It
Mm.
sounds weird." And eventually, the other character tries it and finds out he likes it. So don't knock something until you try it. Is essentially what that
That's
story teaches you. So that's something that's really like
yeah.
top of mind for me, and still to this day is a valuable lesson that I carry with me.
I love that. And there's nothing wrong with a simplistic, and that's what it's for, right? Like we are kids at that point. You're a child reading something that needs to be simple for you to understand, right? So I love that choice. Is there one book that you might have in your pocket that you can read over and over now as an adult, or maybe even a book that came from your studies throughout your educational career?
I go back to I actually have, and I'm sitting in my office now, but I still have Green Eggs and Ham actually sitting in here. Like I
Love it.
still revert back to, not just for myself, also for clients, because it's something that has a powerful
Mm.
lesson that can carry you throughout different phases of your life.
Wow, that's amazing. And do you have a favorite author?
I don't know if I have a single favorite author. I know that I love Zora Neale Hurston's work as it
Yes.
relates to that
Mhm.
Renaissance period and her take on just kind of the Black experience. I really enjoy her work.
I love that. Is that one author that you would like to, if you could meet an author, dead or alive, who would you meet and why? Would it be Zora?
It wouldn't. It would
Okay.
be Maya Angelou.
Oh
Maya
yeah.
Angelou dropped such bombs in her works, and also just in terms of what she shared with us, just in terms of her knowledge. So if I could sit down with anybody, I want to sit down with her. One of the reasons that she even comes up in my mind continuously is something that she didn't originate, but something that she said, and then my mother used that phrasing and shared that with us, which is that when people show you who they are, believe them. And that's something
Mm-hmm.
that she shared with Oprah Winfrey. My mom watched that episode and she shared that with me continuously as a basis of how I interact and engage with others. So I just
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy all that is Maya Angelou and the information she had to share. And there's so many questions I still have that I would love to answer if we could just have a dinner on the other side.
Right, right. That is amazing. I love that. And I love also, so for me, if I could meet someone, it would likely be Zora Neale Hurston. So I love that we have that in common in terms of just loving her as an author and during the period that she was thriving in. But I also feel like she was a good time. Like I just feel like Zora was out here in these streets, like not taking no heat from nobody and like just living her best life. And I just feel like she was also slightly messy. So I felt like she probably had like a little dirt on a lot of people. And I just love it. I just love some of my favorite quotes come from Zora. And I think that she really embodied what it is to be a Black woman who embraced all of her identities and not really being boxed in, within the status quo. And so I love that we have that kind of in common. But are you currently reading anything that's popular right now? Anything that is kind of like um, uh, holding your attention that you would like to share with others?
I don't know how your guest may take this, but I've actually just started a book actually this morning on a morning run, which is called The Ethical Slut. It is a
Mm,
book by therapists who are talking about what it is to be in a either open relationship or polyamorous relationship in today's world. As a therapist, and again, more I'm sure we'll talk about more in the episode, I work with couples, and it's important information because for some couples, they are considering open up a relationship, they are considering polyamory. So I'm somebody who always wants to make sure I have the knowledge necessary to counsel the clients to whatever issues or concerns they bring up. So that's my current read right now.
that is awesome. And who is it by? You said?
Oh my gosh, I actually don't know. It's two
Okay.
different artists. It's a very prominent and book, but I don't know, and I don't actually have the book because I'm doing it via audiobook. So I don't
Oh,
remember.
got it. Okay. I love
But
that. No, and I love that you're doing it on a run. So you're listening and, and also moving your body. So that is pretty interesting and also motivating. I recently started as well last night, actually, Isaac Song by Professor Daniel Black. And so I am a huge fan of his. And he is kind of I guess, a sequel, a continuation of his previous book, Don't Cry for Me.
mm,
And so I love his style of writing, very narrative, very realistic. Almost give you like, it's not exactly like autobiography, but it gives you like he has either lived this or he or he is writing based on someone else's experience. And there is just so enthralling. And he is a professor at Clark Atlanta University here in Atlanta, and one of my favorite authors. But yeah, so if you all want a quick read, well, it's not a quick read, but something that is very relatable in terms of the Black American Southern experience, Isaac Song is a recommendation. Really, all of his books, Perfect Peace and The Coming. But definitely, I would suggest reading Don't Cry for Me first before going to Isaac Song. Um, so I'm really, really excited again. Like normally, Jordan, this is a podcast that kind of focus on, books and kind of like giving book reviews on certain things and certain, authors who are kind of known and unknown. But this month, because it is mental health awareness, I really wanted to take a spin on what it means to really care for Black men and boys' mental health, specifically, and focusing on inviting folks in with dynamic conversations around these topics as we promote mental health for this month and beyond, right? And we know that within the Black community, especially with Black men, there's still a lot of stigma. There
mhm,
still is a lot of hesitation. And so I wanted to bring in some experts like yourself to kind of talk about how can we debunk, these myths and be able to overcome stigma to make sure that we are caring for Black men and boys on the entire spectrum, gay, straight, and otherwise. And so I'm interested, Jordan, if you would share a little bit about what motivated you to become a mental health professional.
I'm more than happy to share that story. So, when I was a junior at Howard University, there was a flyer that was posted, and it asked for students, college students, if they had the time to volunteer their time at a local high school down the street. It's called Maya Angelou Charter School, and helping students, juniors as well as seniors, with certain subjects they were having some issues with, and just trying to get them towards graduation. I was raised with the idea, to whom much is given, much is expected. I volunteered in high school thanks to my family, and that's what something that was instilled in me. So I saw that and I said, I have the time. I can definitely do that. That was my first foray into working with youth. And I did that
Mm,
for maybe 2 semesters. I graduated and I continued my work in that space. I went from my Angelou Charter School to then joining a nonprofit called Horton's Kids in Washington, D.C., that picks up students and brings them on Capitol Hill. We, as the mentees slash tutors, meet with them, help them with homework, have dinner with them, do fun activities. I kept that going and kept that going and did that because it really was something I felt it was extremely important and necessary to see somebody that looks like me in that type of space. Because if we're
mm,
being honest, a lot of mentors and tutors generally don't look like me. You're not seeing a lot of Black males in that space. So did that. Then I moved to Alexandria and started grad school, my very first program. And I decided to take a break from mentoring and tutoring. I was working full time. I was going to grad school. I said, let's give myself a little bit of a break. And after doing so, and after graduating from that program, I said, well, I do want to come back to volunteering because it's something that's very near and dear to my heart. But how can I do that in a more effective way? And I gave it some consideration. And I thought about how volunteering with an organization that was LGBTQ focused combined with youth would be extremely helpful. I know what it's like coming from Atlanta, Georgia, to not feel like you have a sense of community when it comes to LGBT,
mm,
especially in the side that I was raised in. So to have that is so important. And I kind of look far and wide to see what organization in the Northern Virginia area, which is right outside of Washington, D.C., had opportunities available for to volunteer with LGBTQ youth. And surprisingly, it did not exist. So
mm,
I sat with the idea, and this is I coined the phrase I'm an overambitious person. So I sat with the idea, if it doesn't exist, maybe it needs to be created, because when we think about our youth, LGBTQ youth in particular, they experience greater rates of anxiety and depression, suicidal ideation. So, and having social supports via social programming is what helps combat that. So for 2 years, I
Mm,
said every time I had a vacation away from work, I had my iPad and I had a PowerPoint presentation of what this nonprofit would look like. I did that and I kept doing it. And then one day I decided, okay, after 2 years, I'm gonna bite the bullet and I'm just gonna do it. And that was the formation of Safe Space Nova, which still exists to this day. We're in our ninth year, that provides positive programming for LGBTQ youth. Through doing that, I realized my love of working in the community, and what the work I was doing was considered social work. I said I really love helping and supporting people. Well, that's what a
mm,
social worker does. And I myself had been in therapy since I was in college and saw the help and assistance that afforded me. I said, okay, maybe somebody like me should be sitting in that type of position so that that can help invite people in. So what does it take to become a therapist? Did some research, overly ambitious guy that I am, and said,
mhm.
okay, let me look it up. And I decided, oh, okay, there's a program. There's a local program. It's right here at Catholic University, which is in my backyard here in Northern Virginia. It's in Washington, D.C. I looked at the program. I applied. I got in. And it's, as they say, the rest is history.
Mm. You say overly ambitious. I hear what's coming up for me is pursuit. Like it seems like you are in pursuit to make a change. And I'm wondering, where does that come from though? Like, how do you find that ambition and that drive? You see something that's missing and now you want to fix it. Where does that come from?
My family,
Mm,
ultimately, so to talk about my grandparents, for example, because they're a huge part of my inspiration outside of my mother and my older sister, being that they were raised in a time where discrimination and racism were rampant, more rampant than they are in current times. And yet they were able to not just go to college, well, graduate high school, start there as people of color. They graduated college as people of color. And then majority of my grandparents hold doctorate degrees. So
wow.
to have that and to grow
Yeah.
up in that, that is my norm. These people grew up in a time where racism and discrimination were prominent, found a way to make it all the way to a doctorate program. My grandfather was then president of a seminary college. And
Oh,
I saw
wow.
that and I experienced that growing up. His wife, my grandmother, was a tenured professor at the same college. So I walked between her office and his office growing up
Mm,
in Atlanta. And little known fact also is that this seminary college sits and shares the same ground with the rest of the AU Center. It's called
mm.
Interdenominational Theological Center.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. So your grandfather was a former president of ITC. Amazing. Wow. Wow.
that
That's
is where
amazing.
my inspiration comes from. And so there is, if you want it, go after it, is kind of how I
Mhm,
view that, because these are Black people who came from very meager means and have made it to what we consider the top echelons of academia in terms of what they acquire.
mhm. That's so funny because when I was typing up like some information with your name, and I said, "Wow, Jordan Costin Sumpter. That's such a good name. It's just so it's just good." And I come from a religious background. I actually went to seminary here, but I went to Candler School of Theology, um, and so for you to say that, it's kind of like, wow, I think this is connecting the dots for me, even personally.
Mhm.
And the reason why the word pursuit comes up for me is because one of the things that I've noticed within the Black um, uh, educational spaces with Black boys specifically, I've been in higher education for 10 years, and I noticed the lack in some of our young Black boys, the lack of ambition, the lack of drive to want to do better. This lackluster energy. Like, if I get to it, I get to it. I'm here because I'm here, right? And I'm wondering, how would you describe in in the current state that we're in, what would be the current state of mental health for Black men and boys in America?
It is improving. I can just share that just based off of what my front row seat is. I do have more clients now that do look like me. And there was a concern that coming into this field, LGBTQ clients were definitely looking for therapists who could relate to them, but I was concerned that I would not find that many Black males who were. And there are a number of them that have reached out to me via my profile in Psychology Today and said, I'm looking to start therapy. I know this is important and this is something that's going to better me. So I am seeing some improvement. Does that mean that our entire population of Black males have decided they're going to take up therapy? No, it doesn't. We always have,
Mm,
unfortunately, some that fall between the cracks, and I see those every day. And now, part of my reasoning of going into school social work is because I get to go and find the ones who are in the crack and say, okay, I'm pulling you out the crack. Okay, we're gonna deal with this. You don't even know what this thing called therapy is with my high schoolers, but I'm going to tell you what therapy is, and I give you the option. Is this something you think you want? Because if so, it's here for you
mm.
to take advantage of.
Right. No, that's really good. And I like this whole like notion of inviting folks in, right? Because one thing that I've noticed, especially me personally, I don't want to feel like I'm being pressured to do anything, or, I don't want to be pressured to talk about my feelings or about something that I may feel that may be private. So I love this notion that you have, or this approach of inviting folks in, right? Um, why do you think why do you think so many Black men hesitate to seek therapy or speak openly about mental health?
If we're being really honest with ourselves and we think about our communities, it's not something that is generally promoted. If anything, it's something that is generally seen as unnecessary. Outside of therapy and counseling is seen as go talk to your pastor. That's just the
Mhm,
simplest way that I could phrase it in this moment. And that's something that is very common across different Black communities across the United States. So breaking through that and saying, okay, therapy is for everybody and it's something that can help you. And while I appreciate, of course, counseling coming from a pastor, their background and what they're able to take on, handle, manage, if you will, for a client is vastly different than what a clinician. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, so that's my professional title. My education aligns with so many of the issues that we tend to see, versus if you're
mm,
doing that with through the lens of I am a clergyman, if you will, you're not necessarily given that backing if you need to deal with those issues.
mm. And of course, that looks different as a queer Black man, right? Like a clergy may not be someone that you want to talk to, depending on where Reformation or religion or denomination you're coming from. And so, could you speak to some of the challenges that Black men who identify as queer, LGBTQ plus, that they face, and kind of like what stages of life that they face them in, if that makes sense?
There's so much stigma that comes with being a person of color or Black and being LGBTQ. It's a very unique intersection. You're being judged from so many different angles and judged by people from your own community just in terms of how you show up and how you identify. The challenge is getting past that. And that's what therapy can generally help people with. So, something I was really excited to tackle in this type of role is those types of issues. And I've been able to do that and work with a number of clients, Black male clients specifically, Black male queer clients, with finding comfort in themselves and being able to kind of move forward in that growth space versus being stuck in I'm not good enough or I'm
Mm,
not worthy. Those are some of the tropes
mm,
that we tend to kind of take on from a thought process that affect every aspect of our life.
mm. Oh, this theme of worthiness, goodness, like it comes up everywhere, right? Like, we have social media, we have, this climate of comparison, right? Like, especially in the queer community, right? Like, oh, he has a six pack, or they're going on trips, and here I am, living with my mom, or barely being able to afford rent, whatever the case is. So, these thoughts in our head that comes in to makes us feel unworthy of love, of acceptance, even of therapy, like, and those feelings that come and seep into our spirits. Um, what are some ways and strategies that one can combat that, in the moment that they feel right, when they're strolling, right, that they feel these thoughts of unworthiness? What are some strategies that you may have that folks can take on?
One is considering what impact social media has on you. For some clients, they've learned that it's such a negative impact that they need to possibly go on a social media diet. So it's
Mm,
examining, walking through this process. It's what does, after you are looking at any type of social media, writing down your feelings, emotions, your thoughts behind that. And if you find that they're so deeply impactful in a negative way, okay, so how can you lessen your consumption? Does that mean taking it off your phone and having to force yourself to check it on your computer, which inherently is going
mhm,
to mean you're going to not check it as often? Do you need to not check it at all for a while? Do you need to just completely abstain from social media? Just on this topic in particular, something else that really helps gain a better understanding, appreciation for the negative impacts of social media is putting in the context of what you're seeing when it comes to an image is a millisecond of life. So
mm,
all of these thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you have in terms of, well, he looks this way, carries himself this way, he's on this trip, is a millisecond of time. Do you know anything about what it took before that millisecond to get to that point? Do you know anything that happened after they got to that point
mm,
of the perfect
right.
picture on the perfect beach in the perfect outfit? No, and if you take that into consideration, I mean, I think quite frankly, anybody who has a camera or access to one can have a perfectly good millisecond. But it's about, well, what is
Hmm.
the life the person is leading?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because you'd be surprised how many photos I didn't take in, and I'm smiling, and the next moment I'm cussing somebody out. It's like, and so especially on a group trip. But even thinking about friends, right, and community and families, family members, what are how can they support, um or better support, right, black boys in expressing, black men and boys, in expressing their emotions and being okay with being vulnerable, because vulnerable is so taboo, and it's like anti-man, right, it's anti-masculine within the black community in some cases. So how can our families and friends and community members help support, spaces for black men and boys to feel comfortable in being vulnerable?
Facilitating open dialogues about emotions is something that I often have to take on as a therapist with clients because it's not something that a lot of black males have experienced within their own homes in which they grew up. So it's okay, what is an emotional check-in? As simple as it sounds, something that most people do not do on a fairly regular basis, which is how am I feeling in the moment? Not where am I, what am I trying to get accomplished? Of course, that's important. We have things that we need to do, but how am I feeling in the moment in which I'm trying to get this done? Are my emotions impeding whatever I'm trying to do or how I'm trying to show up in the space? So, from a household perspective, from a family dynamic perspective, how open and honest are you all being about emotions? I have an emotional
Mhm.
chart that I bring out with all of my clients and say, here's just a short list of emotions. What are you feeling today? What did you feel yesterday and the day before? Parents ideally should be doing that same type of work within the household so the child, in particular black males, can feel comfortable sharing. It's, you know what, I'm a bit exhausted today, but I feel like I can still make it through. Or I'm super
Mhm.
excited. Or I am frustrated. So as their vocabulary grows, they can use more of what the emotional sheet is or how it's listed, but just be that comfort is what's important that kind of
Mhm.
build in the home.
Yeah, I love that. And also I love that point about as their vocabulary grows, there's, a now an expression of a range of emotions. And so, I've seen this in parenting with one of my close homegirls. She's raising two boys, two black boys. And when her young one says, I'm frustrated, I'm mad, and she's like, okay, tell me more about that. Why are you frustrated? Wait, what's coming up for you? And it really forces him to have to put things into words, right,
Mm.
rather than throwing things, or rather than walking out and slamming the door. but he has to sit with that. And I think that those are good strategies as well as adults, like being able to like really sit with that and exploring and diving deeper as to why you feel this way, right? I'm also interested, since this is, of course, Mr. Big Head Reads, and we cover a lot of books. What role can storytelling play, like through books, media, music, in breaking stigma and promoting healing within the Black community as it relates to Black men and boys?
Telling your story humanizes the experience. It
Mm,
makes it familiar. It makes it feasible. It makes it doable. So the more that we share, especially for the younger generations that are coming up underneath us, the more they feel comfort. That's not strange. That's not abnormal. That is normal. I remember I heard a podcast and a Black male talked about his experience with therapy, or I grew up in a household where my dad was open about his emotions with me. So sharing your story in any type of form, whether it's orally, whether it's in a book, whether it's via social media, really humanizes and familiarizes people with the experience to the extent that they feel more comfortable sharing and taking on more themselves and improvements.
hmm. Yeah. Do you have any examples of like maybe an example of a good book or movie or play that did what you just shared?
All Boys Aren't Blue, which is a
Okay.
story that just really highlights how we think of, and this is another issue that comes into play when you're talking about being a person of color and LGBTQ. It's this idea that of hyper masculinity and what that looks like, and anything that is not or does not look in that way is wrong or again abnormal. And a book like that from George actually says it is normal for a boy to be different.
Mm,
Different is something that used to be a derogatory term, but now I personally, as an individual, as well as a therapist, kind of flip that on his head and say, like, being different is something good. Who wants to be like everybody else? I'm a therapist who walks around at 40 years old with good old glitter nails, and I'm abnormal and I'm different. All boys aren't blue.
Yeah, it's All Boys on Blue by George M. Johnson. That's a really good example. One that comes to mind for me is Moonlight, the movie. I
Mm,
thought that was a great depiction of both pain and survival, and also like the evolution of identity. Like we saw, the main character really um, just exploring his identity through a lot of resistance, right? And his surroundings were really kind of pressuring him to be someone that he wasn't, right? And I think that, being raised in the hood and showing all of those different um, depictions of blackness, but also the reality of like masculinity and all of the all of the themes of or how masculine can be on a spectrum, right? And so I think that we have such great examples, but also there's still room for more to be included, right?
mm.
More to be written, more to be recorded. And so yeah, so I love that. What is one moment or success or a success story that reminded you of why you do this work and why this work matters?
This I will go back to the very first event that Safe Space Nova hosted. It was a Marvel night. So this is 9 years ago. I, I went to the local store and just bought a whole bunch of Marvel movies. I've got a whole bunch of pizzas and wings, and we had our um, other members of the team there just to kind of oversee the event. And I sat back as the youth started to come in, and I was in awe. This was an idea, and when I say this idea being or this notion of being overly ambitious, when I started this organization, I had a bachelor's degree in television production, and had I no, and I hadn't, and I finished my first master's. My master's was in public relations, and I was working in IT. So communications, education wise, and then my working experience was information technology. And
Mm,
I'm a black queer guy from Atlanta. I founded a nonprofit that is here, that exists, that is legitimate, that is supporting my community. That is an all moment if ever there is one. There's so many people that I've met throughout the years who are unwilling to push themselves to, I have this idea, I've thought it through, but hitting that like final button of, okay, we're going live, we're going to do this. And the fact that I was able to do that, and that culminated in that very first event, and we continued to see successes and have more students come through our doors and our programs. But that to me is exceptional. Nobody can ever take that away from me.
That's amazing. I love that. And also just loving the thought of like if you have an idea, run with it, right? The resources will come, right? If God has given you or the spirit has given you something and that the world needs, move on it, right? And truly you're a testament to that. If you could tell every black boy or man, black man, one thing about his mental health, what would it be?
That it's important and you need to take care of it. We
Hmm.
do the same. If you think about, I have a headache or an ear infection or I broke my leg, I'm gonna go see a doctor so I can make sure that my body is gonna be okay. Well, what about your mind? It's a part of your body. Therapy is medicine for the mind and so necessary for every human being.
That's it. I love that. Any resources that you would like to provide? Any for our followers to be able to follow you? Maybe even a website that you would like to share with us as we kind of draw near.
Sure. So if for anybody wants to follow me, you can always reach out. My handle on Instagram is at affirmative guy. And if you're ever seeking therapy, which I think is super important and the premise of this conversation here today, you can reach out to me. And even if I am unavailable, I have a lot of colleagues who do look like me in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area who would be happy to meet with you. You can look me up on Psychology Today. Is the easiest way to find me. Like literally the words Psychology Today. If you Google them and just put in Jordan, just like Michael Jordan, and then Costin, the last name, cost of money and number 10 is how I simplify it for people. You put cost and 10 together with one T, get my last name, it very easily will come up. And you can just reach out and I'm happy to be a resource and be the connecting piece.
I love that. Jordan Costin Sumpter, thank you so much for your time, for your light, for your pursuit, your ambition that has really changed the landscape within psychotherapy within the DMV area and beyond. And so I'm hoping that folks will reach out to you and support Safe Space Nova. So thank you again for just sharing your time with Mr. Big Head Reads. And so we are just getting started. We're kicking this month off right. Again, remember that healing is truly revolutionary. Black literacy is Black liberation. And so we are moving forward with a guest next week. And please stay tuned and follow us on Mr. Big Head Reads on Instagram, as well as MrBigHeadProduction.com. All right, for more information. See you all soon. Stay well.